Well, good afternoon. Now, before we start, let us see. I think there was a question before we had a break previously. Good afternoon, Suguru. Braja, sir, Sohani Saha is a mind reader. Is she read mind by using different non-verbal cues of empathy? I do not know about Sohani Saha, but mind reader, if they claim somebody, then this kind might be perhaps the method through which it could do. So through the emotional cue, at least we can understand the mind of the person to a great extent. They might be good in the at least empathy. Some type of, you can say, experience might be there, some expectation might be there, some you can see the speculation might also be there, intelligent gaze might be there. But well, this is one of the most important thing that you can see allows us to do the mind reading and all. So in the previous, before the break, we were talking about the measurement of empathy. How can we measure empathy and how do we conceptualize empathy in terms of the empathy profile or Pons profile, profile of nonverbal sensitivity developed by people like Robert Rosenthal. Now, let us talk about some other aspects of empathy now. Change the paragraph and then after write further. Write down further. Next subtopic, the source and origin of empathy. Source and origin of empathy. So what we will talk about now is that from where this ability actually comes to us. Is it that something we learn, as Sohani Saha Braj said? So is it something that we learn or is it something innate in us, inside us, by birth maybe? So let us see that what exactly is the role of learning and role of biology inside that. Write down firstly, a certain ability to empathize with others, is present with us. A certain ability to empathize with others is present with us since the birth itself. Since the birth itself. So this is what we have found. Empathy is not something that is purely learned. Some amount of empathy, at least some crude basic core empathy is there with our birth itself. For this we can have both a day-to-day life experience and some scientific evidence also for that. Let's take a few day-to-day life experience. Just imagine a situation, suppose for example there is a room, in that room suppose there is a bed, and suppose on that bed 5 young infants are there. All of them are very young, for just 2 days old, 5 days old, one 7 days old. So young they are that they have not yet learned anything about the life. So they are just a bundle of biological impulse. There is no learning, there is no humanity as such into them. They cannot think, they cannot talk, they cannot understand, they cannot learn. Now, suppose for example, suddenly one child starts crying. Do you know within a minute what will happen? Well, all other 4 will also start crying. What happened? Well, this child cried because of course he may have certain problem. That's why he cried. But why did the other 4 cry? They did not have any problem. So they cried because of the empathy. So this is a very crude empathy that the children have. They felt the emotion of others and on the basis of that they started crying. Now there is a difference between child sympathy at that age and our empathy as an adult. What is the difference? Difference is that for us the adults, for example, as we have seen in our many classes earlier, that every emotion has certain impulse associated with that. Every emotion has some impulse associated with that. So we have so every emotion creates an impulse, strong emotion or weak emotion. Impulse of happiness, for example, is to laugh. Impulse of sadness is to cry. Impulse of anger is to shout. Impulse of fear is to run away. So every emotion has an impulse that motivates us to act in a certain manner to handle the triggering event, to respond to the triggering event. Now as we grow up, then we have learned to our impulse. So impulse control, as we have seen, is an important part of human life. By 4 years of age, impulse control has become quite effective. So impulse control we have learned. So it is possible for us, for example, to feel an emotion without acting on that. We can control the emotion, still we can feel. We control the impulse, we can still feel the emotion. So for example, it is okay for us, it is possible for us to be happy without laughing, to be sad without crying, to be angry without shouting, and to be afraid without running. So we can control that impulse, but young children of that age, they have not yet learned to control their impulse. So in them, the emotions and impulse are in a way fused together. They're fused together. The moment they feel an emotion, they impulsively act on that. So this is what happens. So we also feel that emotion, as we will see in the next topic, but they felt that emotion and impulsively they started acting on that. This is the day-to-day example of core empathy that we have, a basic empathy, a baseline empathy in a way, that we have even as a small child, as small as 2 days or 5 days old also. That is a, you can say, day-to-day life evidence for that. We have similar evidence of this thing, even we can see for, you can see the scientific evidence. In this, let's talk about some scientific evidence for empathy being innate to us. Now in this area, if you think, the most important research in this area, one of the most important researches in this area was done by a neuroscientist called V.S. Ramachandran. Now, V.S. Ramachandran is one of the most well-known, most respected neuroscientists in the world today. He is a professor at some American university, Harvard or somewhere, of course of Indian origin. But he has done lots of research in neuroscience, and his researches in this area at least has been found to be extremely influential. One of the most well-known, most respected, most important neuroscientists in the world today. Now, a few years ago, he had written a very interesting book also called, name of that book was, you can say, The Telltale Brain. Again, I am not recommending you to read that book, but in this book, yes, I will mention some of the ideas of that book in my class also a number of times. So what he did in this book, that he has written in that book one interesting research that I would like to briefly talk about here with reference to empathy. Now once it so happened that there was a person who was undergoing a brain surgery, and while brain surgery his skull was open and his neocortex was visible from outside, and as a requirement of the surgery he was kept conscious. So when we do the brain surgery, then sometimes the patients are kept conscious because of some requirement of the surgery itself, because people say that in the brain, you can say in our neocortex, we do not have a pain cell. Because of that, we don't feel pain in the way you can feel pain when your hand is cut. We don't feel pain in the brain, number one. We don't have the pain cells there. Number two, there may be a requirement of surgery in the brain. When a person is given anesthesia, then he might go in coma maybe. So in this case, we often keep the person conscious by artificial means. Can say we do not allow the person to sleep or become unconscious or give anesthesia to him. So this person's brain was open, his neocortex was visible, and he was kept conscious. Now what happened there? Suppose for example, this is the neocortex of that person, and his neocortex was under observation, visible from. What these people did, that they inserted a large number of small tiny electrodes in different part of their his brain, so that they can measure the electrical activity happening in different parts of the brain. And after that, what happened, that suppose for example in the forefinger of this person here, a small pin was pricked. Now if you prick a pin on the forefinger, you will feel pain. Suppose for example this was the finger at which nail was pricked. He felt pain. The moment he felt pain, it was found that this part of the brain started glowing. This part. So every time when pin was pricked on this part of the body, then finger, this part of the brain started glowing. It means that the perception, you can say, of pain in this part of the body is related to that part of the brain. It is well known. It is not something that new that they discovered. So it is a well known fact. We all know since long that our brain has a physical map of every point of our body. So every point of our body is physically mapped into some part of the brain where we feel the pain or something. That is the reason that you know that somebody touches you from back also, then we know the point at which touch has taken place even without seeing that who that person and where the touch has happened. Or even in the dark of the night, if you can see that a mosquito bites you, you exactly know that where the biting has taken place. So that is what we already know. So it is a well known thing again that every point of our body is mapped into our brain directly. This was not a new discovery, but after that they did something which was surprising and new. What they did, that they suppose, for example, my brain is under observation. Suppose Suppose my mind is under observation, and suppose in front of me your forefinger is pricked exactly at the same point. Now in this case I don't feel any pain, only I see you feeling the pain in the same part of your finger. Suppose for example this is the point on your finger where the pin is pricked. I see that pin being pricked in your forefinger. Then also it was found that same part of the brain started glowing then also. Now that was a new discovery. So it was found that whether we feel pain in my own finger or I see pain in your finger, in either case same part of my brain started responding, get activated. Now they found that strange. Then after lots of research happened, then after new you can say type of neuron was discovered in our brain, they call that as mirror neuron. So some of you may have even heard the name of mirror neuron. A lot of excitement has been created among the people in the recent times about this mirror neuron. So mirror neuron, these neurons are called mirror neuron. What is a mirror neuron? Mirror neuron is the one that mirrors the emotion of others into our own brain. It gets activated, it starts reacting not only when we feel the pain, it starts reacting even when we see somebody else feeling similar pain. So that is what we call the mirror neuron. V.S. Ramachandran said that this mirror neuron is responsible for two types of human actions. He said that, well, which we are talking about in these classes here, two types of human action. First of all, it is responsible for self-awareness, and the same neuron is responsible even for empathy. Same neuron is found to be responsible even for our empathy. What is self-awareness? Self-awareness means what? My awareness of my own pain. Empathy is what? My awareness of pain of somebody else. So when I feel that there is a pain in my finger, that is a sort of a very crude level of self-awareness. And when I see somebody else feeling similar pain, then that is an empathy. In both the cases, he said the same, you can say, neural mechanism gets activated in our brain. So in this sense, he claimed, V.S. Ramachandran, that self-awareness and empathy are the two sides of the same coin. Our brain does not differentiate between that whether the pain is being qualitatively, at least quantitatively it does, but qualitatively it does not differentiate between whether the pain is being felt by me or I see you feeling the same pain. In either case, my brain starts acting in a similar manner. Quantity is different. Qualitatively, there is not much difference between. So self-awareness and empathy are same thing. Two sides of the same thing. My pain feeling me is self-awareness. Me feeling your pain is empathy. Both of them involve same neural mechanism according to people like V.S. Ramachandran. Now he found that this neuron is such an important, might have played such an important role in the development of human society, human civilization, that V.S. Ramachandran called this mirror neuron as the neuron of civilization. He called that as neuron of civilization. So he said that human beings have been able to develop such a complex civilization that today we are talking about, you can say, the global village, for example. Such a complex civilization we have been able to develop not because of our IQ and intelligence, but because of our mirror neuron. So had mirror neuron not been there, then perhaps in spite of having equal amount of intelligence in us, IQ maybe, well, we might not have been able to develop such a, you can say, strong, you can say the such a complex civilization that we are today living in. Think of it. Does it ever happen that, have you ever, think of it, have you ever cried while watching a film? All of you must have done if you are a human being. Now, if you think about rationally, looking at seeing a film, watching a film, if you start crying, rationally speaking, does that not appear to be a very stupid thing to do? That's a very stupid thing, because you know that it's just a picture being running on the screen. There is no human being directly involved into that. So it is just a picture, but even then, well, looking at that picture again, you become so disturbed that you start crying. It's not just you think that this person is going through such a painful condition. You start actually feeling that pain and start acting on it, but tears start coming out of your eyes. You start crying there. So it is not a thinking, it is a feeling that happens. Your mirror neuron gets activated. Your mirror neuron gets activated even when you see a film like this one. So if you have cried while watching a film, you know what empathy is. Have you ever cried while reading a novel or a story? Well, you must have done if you have some even small interest in some literature. Now, why is it that you cry when you watch when you read a novel and all? Rationally speaking, that's a very stupid thing to do. You are reading a story and then also you start crying. Is that not very stupid and idiotic? But even then, even while reading that story, well, it is difficult for you to stop yourself. Tears will start coming out. You are not thinking that this person is going through such a bad condition. You start feeling that and responding according to that. So your brain does not recognize or differentiate whether you are feeling the pain or you are seeing a picture feeling the similar pain on the screen, or you are reading a novel or a story about a person who is feeling a pain. In either case, your brain starts responding equally. You start crying while watching a film or reading a novel. Does it ever happen that while watching a film, if you see a villain, very bad villain, Mogambo, Joshua type of, now in this case, does it happen that you become so angry at some point that you start clenching your fist, thinking that, saying that, okay, if this person comes in, I will break his, I can say, head? It's not that you are thinking that he is a bad person. You start actually acting as if you are going to hit that person. You start clenching your fist. Every symptom of anger will be there inside you. So again, your brain does not recognize that you are just watching a film. Your brain starts acting as if you are going to fight with that villain just now. So that is what mirror neuron and empathy is. So all of these are the day-to-day examples of empathy. We all suffer from that. Just imagine, had these things not been there, then do you think that our civilization would have been such a rich civilization? Of course not. So art, culture, sculpture, literature, film, music, etc., all of them activate your emotional mind through mirror neuron. So these things would never have been as important for us as it is had we did not have the mirror neuron. That is the reason that V.S. Ramachandran called this as the neuron of civilization. The idea is that this mirror neuron might have played such an important role in our survival during the evolutionary period that it has become part of our biological, well, inheritance in a way. Just imagine a situation that you are in a jungle and you are with a group of 20 people. Now, one person in your group somewhere else, he saw a lion. He became very afraid. Now, in this case, you must feel the same fear without seeing the lion, so that you can start running away from that. The person who saw the lion first, he might be eaten by the lion. But by making all of you afraid and run, well, he ensured the survival of the group. So those people, for example, who had more mirror neuron, they felt a stronger fear, and because of that they ran faster. And those people who did not have the mirror neuron, they did not run and they were eaten by the lions. And we are the progenitor of those people who ran faster, who had more mirror neurons. Because of that, we have such a complex system of mirror neuron or empathy in our biology. So mirror neuron might have played a very important role in our survival during the evolutionary period, and because of that, it has become part of our biology. So we are biologically equipped to feel the emotion of others. We all have that basic ability to feel the emotion of others. Empathy is that basic, that rooted into our biology. So that is where the origin of empathy is. Let me see, there is a question, I think, before we proceed further. Sir, how self-awareness and empathy are related with each other, Madan Saha? I told you, Madan, that self-awareness is my awareness of my own pain and empathy is my awareness of your pain. Both of them are mirror neuron, both of them involve mirror neuron, same biological mechanism. That's why they are related to each other. They are the two sides of the same coin. I've already talked about that a lot. Now, next important thing that we will discuss further is that change the paragraph and then after write further. Change the paragraph and then write further. But a proper development of empathy requires a certain type of emotional interaction of empathy requires a certain type of interaction of the emotional interaction of the child with his or her caregivers, particularly parents. But a proper development of empathy requires a certain type of emotional interaction of the child with his or her caregivers, particularly parents. So, this is what we found, that this biological ability is there inside us, but the development of that biological ability, well, it requires a social support, a social interaction. So, the proper development of empathy depends on to what extent the child has a proper interaction, emotional interaction with his caregiver, particularly parents play a very important role in that, according to these people here. Though in India, even other caregivers can play that role. Other caregivers, like you can say the grandparents or uncle or auntie, other people in the family and all. In America, parents are more considered important because, well, in America, other caregivers, non-parental caregivers are professional, crèche or you can see the maid servant, etc. They do not have such a complex family system that we in India have. But idea is that anybody who is like a parent can play an important role in the development of empathy. How does that development happen? Write down further. The process through which it happens is called attunement. So, attunement is the name given to that process through which the empathy often develops and becomes, you can see, the evolve as it is in us, most of us. What is attunement? Write down further. Attunement is a process in which an adult responds with an appropriate emotion. An adult responds with an appropriate emotion when a child expresses some emotion. When a child expresses some emotion. When a child expresses some emotion. So, this is how we define attunement, that when a child expresses some emotion, then how does the adult respond to that? Through that, attunement actually happens. What is the meaning of that? Think of it. Suppose for example, you are sitting somewhere, just in front of you a child is playing. Suddenly, somewhere in public place, also an airport or somewhere, suppose, suddenly a child looks at you, and looking at you, child smiles, laughs, giggles. Then what will be your natural response to that child? Well, if you are a normal human being, then you might possibly smile back. So if you smile back at the child, then you are providing attunement to the child. So again, remember, attunement is not imitation. There is difference between, as we will see shortly, attunement and imitation. Attunement is not imitation, because when the child, you can say, smiles, then you smile back. You provide attunement, you don't imitate the child. It is not imitation, because if the child starts crying in front of you, then you don't start crying. You try to, well, comfort the child, soothe the child. If a child gets angry at you, then you don't get angry at the child in return. You try to again understand his anger. If the child becomes afraid, then you try to again comfort him. So that is, so in this case, so keyword here is the appropriate. So when the child expresses some emotion, then the adult responds with an appropriate emotion, not imitate the same emotion. Appropriate. So when somebody smiles at you, the appropriate emotion is to smile back. But when somebody cries, then appropriate emotion is to somehow comfort the person, soothe the person, calm down the person maybe. So that is appropriate. So by providing attunement, we tell the child that how to. Attunement basically, word has been right from the tuning. So you bring the child in tune with the emotion of others. You tell the child that if you are happy, then I also smile. So this is how you should respond to the other people also when they are smiling at you. And when you cry, then I respond differently. This is how you should respond to maybe others when they cry in front of you. So we tell the child how to respond. So that feeling is there, but how this feeling can be expressed, society teaches us. This is where the culture plays a role. So that is what attunement is. That is how attunement actually happens. We are taught by our society, our elders maybe, that what is appropriate emotion in a particular situation when we see others feeling or expressing certain emotions. Now, good thing is that all of us perhaps, well, we all have very, you can say, sufficient amount of attunement in our because of childhood. Because of that, we all have enough empathy inside us. That is why we are able to live a normal life in our family, in our friends, among our school, college, etc., etc. We live a normal life. But there are some people who are not that fortunate. They may not have got enough attunement in their childhood when they were growing up. So this lack of attunement may sometimes be a little problematic for these children. Let us talk about what is that. Change the paragraph and write a subtopic if you want. The cost of misattunement. The cost of misattunement. So when the attunement is not sufficient, then that situation is called misattunement. So those people who are misattuned, they have not learned how to properly respond, appropriately respond to the other's emotion. They often face some difficulties in their life. We'll talk about briefly what are those costs that people pay when attunement is not sufficient, and they are low in empathy. So write down further. If the attunement is not sufficient, then it may result into a lack of empathy. It may result into a lack of empathy in the person. Which may have the following consequence. Well, there was a question before that, Preetham. Sir, what is the difference between empathy and sympathy? Or both of sir? No, they are not same, Preetham, but difference between them we will talk about in the tomorrow's class. We will discuss some other things like empathy, sympathy, compassion, etc. We will talk all of them. But in tomorrow's class, I have planned to study that. But they are not different. They are not same. That is what a short answer is. What is the difference? Later on. Now, the idea here is that if the empathy is not enough, sorry, attunement is not enough, not sufficient, then as the child grows up, it may result into a lack of empathy. And that lack of empathy may possibly have some consequence for the person. We will talk about three important consequences of the lack of empathy. And remember, these three consequences we are going to talk about in the increasing order of severity. So, first consequence is simpler. It is not a problem, it is just inconvenience that the people may face. Second consequence can be serious, can be sometimes serious, sometimes difficult, problematic, and third can be extremely serious. So, three consequences of can say misattunement we will talk about in our class today. So, let us talk about what are these costs, and again increasing order of severity. First one, I don't. They means people who are slightly low in empathy. They sometimes express inappropriate emotion. They sometimes express inappropriate emotions, or they sometimes express inappropriate emotions, or sometimes they fail to express appropriate emotions, or sometimes they fail to express appropriate emotions, or sometimes they fail to express appropriate emotions on the basis of context. Fail to express appropriate emotions on the basis of context. So, this is the first important thing. The idea is that context plays a very important role. What is the role of the context in emotional life of the people? Think of it. Every context, I will give you some example of that. Every social context has an emotional background, and if you look at empathy in that sense, then we often say that empathy is a type of internal gauge or an internal barometer which allows us to pick up the emotion of others, and based on that, well, it allows us to adjust our behavior with reference to what others are feeling. It is a type of internal adjustment mechanism which allows us to adjust our emotional status with respect to that of the others, and context plays a very important role in that. Let us take a small example. Suppose this is the context that I am talking about. This is the context that we are talking about, and every context has, as I told you earlier also, that it has an emotional background, it has an emotional underline current. Think of it, this context I am talking about. Suppose just take a small example. Suppose one day you are very normal in your emotion, neutral, not very high, not very low, center of that circle. Suppose for example, you go to one of your friend's house, but the moment you reach your friend's house, suddenly you find that 10 of your other friends had already gathered there, and they are enjoying, some party is going on, everybody is dancing, singing, well, something like this. Everybody is extremely happy, exuberant, ecstatic. Now, what will be your behavior? Well, if you are a normal person, then your behavior may be something like this. You may, suppose you are A. Now, you may stand on the corner for some time. You look at everybody in the room who is dancing, singing, etc., enjoying a lot. Looking at them slowly, you will see that your arousal will start increasing. And within a few minutes or so, you will go into the situation and you become as happy as anybody else. You start dancing and singing as happily, as exuberantly as anybody else. What happened here? That empathy. So, the moment you start looking at all those people dancing and singing in the room, then slowly your mirror neuron maybe gets activated. Because of that, suddenly you can say your arousal will keep on increasing, you will start becoming happy, and within a few minutes you become as happy as everybody else. So in a way we can see that empathy allows us to fit into the situation. We fit into the situation, we often become part of the situation. We are never outsider, we go inside. We become an insider, we become participant in the emotional activity that the people in the group are doing. It can be for any emotion. Suppose for example, again you are neutral, not very emotional at that time. Suppose you are walking on the road, suddenly you find that somebody has died and his dead body is taken to a funeral ground, and there is a funeral procession is there with him. 20 people are there in that procession. You don't know that person, he is a complete stranger. You start walking these people, walking with these people. Within 10 minutes you will see, if you walk with them, within 10 minutes you will see that you might become as sad as anybody else in that group. Even if you don't know anybody in that group who those people are, their sadness will activate maybe your mirror neuron, and you might become as. Or go to an emergency ward suppose you go to the emergency ward in a hospital, spend half an hour there. Within 10 minutes, you will start seeing that all the people in that ward are extremely painful. Again, somebody had met with a serious accident, somebody is suffering from a debilitating disease. So look at the pain of those people. Within a few minutes, you will see that you will become as sad as anybody else, as distressed as anybody else, even if you personally do not know any of that person in the world. Doctors often suffer from that problem. We often call that as empathy distress. And we feel distress because of the empathy. Because doctors, you can say, for long hours in a day, they deal mostly with those people, particularly those doctors who are in the casualty ward, who are in the, again say, the mortuary, for example, those doctors who are in the emergency ward. So in such cases, you can see that these doctors start feeling the distress, because the so much of time they spend with that they start feeling that distress, and they must learn how to control that. Otherwise, they will go into depression maybe. In American engineering college, I don't know in Indian colleges they are doing it or not, but I have read that in many of the American medical colleges, these doctors are actually given training how to control the empathy distress. Otherwise, it might become very difficult for them to handle the situation in that case, or live a normal life outside of that situation. So idea here is that empathy is something that allows us to pick up the emotion of others and accordingly gauge emotions of others context, and accordingly change our own emotions so that we can become fit. We can fit into the situation, we become like more and less other people in a way. That is what we can say empathy does. So that is meaning of the term appropriate emotion on the basis of context. We all are normally able to do. But such people that I am talking about, we can say that their barometer is a little faulty. So because of that, they are not able to see or show the appropriate emotion. So they can express inappropriate emotions sometimes, or fail to express appropriate emotions. So for example, they can start laughing at a place where laughter is extremely inappropriate, like an emergency ward in a hospital, or they remain sad sitting seriously where sadness is not appropriate, in a party maybe. So in a party also they remain sad, and in a, again say, emergency ward also they might possibly laugh. Again, remember, it is not a big problem. It is just a small inconvenience that these people may possibly face. It is not a big problem. I repeat again and again. A number of people have this small inconvenient thing in their life. It is not a big problem. It is just a small inconvenience. These people often become a little unsocial. People may sometimes ridicule them because their emotional expression is a little inappropriate on the basis of the situation. So people may make fun of them, ridicule them, pass many sarcastic comment at them, etc., etc. And because of that, sometimes these people become a little unsocial also. They start avoiding the social situation because they know that they find it difficult to fit. So they often feel awkward in such a situation. They start avoiding the social situation and they become more and more introvert in that case. So that is one of the problem. Not just introvert is a okay, but sometimes avoiding, so this agoraphobia as we call, that may be a little problematic thing for such people. So that is one thing. Not a big problem, a little inconvenience. Second can be a little bigger problem. Write down for the second one. Sometimes they express an extreme and unfortunate range of emotions. Sometimes they express an extreme and unfortunate range of emotion, which may sometimes have serious consequence. Now, this is second important. But before we talk about such people, let's talk about range of emotion. Idea here is that we all have a range of emotion, that when we are emotional, then how much emotion is okay in that context. Context determines the range of emotion, the extremity of emotion, how extreme emotion we can actually express. Think of it. Suppose you are in a physical classroom in front of me. Suppose, for example, somebody tells you a joke in a classroom, a teacher tells you a joke in the classroom. A similar joke with equal funny value, humor value, is told to you by a friend in a friend circle. Similar joke is told to you by your father in your dinner table. And similar joke is told to you by an interviewer in UPSC interview. Similar joke with equal humor value. But do you think that in all the four cases, your response to that will be same, your laughter will be same in that case? Of course not. With your friend, you can laugh much loudly. In a classroom, your laugh will be slightly less. In front of your father, it might be a little more controlled. And in an interview board, you may simply smile. You may not even laugh. Joke is same, but your response is different. Your laughter is different. That is what we call the range. Or suppose, for example, you are angry. Suppose you are angry at a teacher in a classroom, not at me, some other teacher. Suppose you are angry in a classroom. Suppose you are angry at your friend. Suppose you are angry at your father at home. You are angry at an interviewer in a UPSC interview. In all the four cases, do you think that your expression of anger will be same? Of course not. To your friend, perhaps you may be more aggressive in your anger. In a classroom, you will be much more controlled. In front of your father, you may be as controlled, maybe. And in the case of interview, you may not express your anger at all. You simply may keep quiet in that case, completely suppress your anger. So anger is same in all the four cases, but your expression will be very different. So the idea is that on the basis of context, whether we are in the classroom or on a dinner table in our family, or with a friend, with a stranger, or in an interview board, etc., at different places, well, we have a different range of emotion. Empathy allows us to gauge that in this situation, how much laughter is okay. We don't make a calculation that no, in front of an interview, I should not laugh. No, it happens naturally. We don't have to make a calculation, you don't have to make a thinking for that. So this is what emotion, you can say, empathy actually does. So this is what happens. But such people I am talking about, second group of people, their range of emotion is extreme and unfortunate. That extreme range of emotions they express. When they become happy, then they become extremely happy. Now that may not be a problem. Again, that may be simple inconvenience, but the problem can become when they become angry and they become extremely angry. And that extreme anger may actually become a serious problem. You must have heard such cases. If you read the newspaper, then many other day you can hear such news in general. Very unfortunately, such things, you can say, keep on happening in our country even in 21st century. Think of it, for example, that suppose, for example, you must have heard about, suppose there is a teacher in a school, the teacher becomes extremely angry at a child, did not do the homework, some not enough. The teacher hits the child so badly that the child has lost his hearing ability. You may have heard about such cases and all. Now, how can a teacher hit a child so badly that the child may lose his hearing ability altogether? That is where the lack of empathy, problem of empathy comes up. Because if you look at empathy here, that as I told you earlier, empathy is a type of, you can say, gauge or barometer or internal adjustment mechanism. But also we can say that empathy is a type of internal brake. Empathy is a type of internal brake which prevents us from harming others. So it is internal control mechanism, internal inhibition mechanism, internal management mechanism that stops us from doing something wrong to the other people. Just think of it. Suppose for example, you are given two choices, only two choices, there is no third choice. First choice is that, suppose for example, there is a button in front of you. So there is a button in front of you. You have to press that button. And if you press that button, then at some place, a faraway place, maybe outside India somewhere, at a faraway place, suppose 1000 people will die. 1000 people will die. And the second choice is that there is a stranger standing in front of you, tied in a pole, and there is a knife in front of you. Take the knife out and stab this person to death. So in this case, you have to stab this person to death. In this case, only one person will die. If these are the only two choices, there is no third choice at all, then in this case, what would you prefer to do? Would you press the button or stab this person to death? Now, when I ask this question in my physical classroom, almost 90% of the students say, sir, I will prefer to press the button. So, rationally speaking, what is the right thing to do? Better thing to do at least? Well, stabbing would be a better thing to do. Why so? Because at least in this case, only one person is dying. In this case, 1000 people would be dying. So, that is where we can see the problem. But in this case, almost 90% people perhaps in the world would prefer to press the button rather than stab. Suppose you are a very rational person. You decide, you think that no, I am not going to kill 1000 people. I will kill rather only one. So, thinking that you make a second choice, and in that case, suppose for example, if you try to kill that one person by stabbing, take a knife in your hand and try to stab that person, you will see that in that case perhaps your hand will start shaking. Not only your hand will start shaking, there will be physical weakness in the muscles of your hand. It is very easy for us to hit a wall with a knife. It is very difficult for us to hit a human being with the same knife. So, why it is so difficult? Well, empathy plays a role. Empathy is a brake that stops you from hitting a human being with the same knife. So, that is where the empathy comes from. So, if 1000 people dying somewhere else, it will not invoke your empathy. It is just a event. And one person dying in front of you, being killed by you with a knife, being stabbed, well, it will create strong empathy in you. And your brake will become so strong and effective in that case, then perhaps you will pull your hand back, may not stab. Think of it. This is where the empathy comes up. Think of it. A few months ago, there was a devastating earthquake was there in Turkey. 50,000 people died. You become very sad. Of course, we all become sad when we hear such a news. Tomorrow, suppose you get a news, the total death toll is 50,001. Then do you think that your sadness will increase because of that one extra addition to the death toll? Of course not. It is just a number, extra number, one more number. But suppose that one person dies in front of you. You see that person dying in front of you in extreme pain, for example. Do you think you will be affected more by that? Well, in that case, you will be affected more than that, more by that. One person dying in front of you will affect you much more than 50,000 people dying somewhere else. You know, there is a famous quotation of Joseph Stalin. He had said somewhere that one death is a tragedy and a million death is a statistics. I repeat, this is a quotation of Joseph Stalin. One death is a tragedy and a million death is a statistics. Now, that is an interesting thing to see. One person dying in front of us is a tragedy. Why it is a tragedy? Because it invokes empathy inside. That empathy gives us a feeling of it being a tragedy. So, one person dying in front of us is a tragedy. It invokes empathy around you. And a million death is just a statistic. It is just a number. It does not invoke empathy. We can rationally count a number. How easily, how simply we talk about the death of 6 million people in Holocaust. Does it disturb you? It does not disturb you. But one person, well, just think of it, just yesterday, that Manipur violence has been going on for last, can say, 2-3 months maybe. Well, it did not create much, you can say, consternation among many people. And yesterday, that one video became viral on Twitter. You see that it created a storm in the country. Why so? Because that one video, that one girl being tortured in such a manner, it created strong empathy inside us. And large number of people started opposing that so strongly in that case. Twitter is full of that, you can say, outrage in the India about that one video. So many people died earlier also. Many atrocities might have happened that did not invoke empathy, but just a number. But you see somebody in such a bad condition, maybe it will invoke such a strong empathy in you that you will become extremely outraged in that. That is what empathy does to us. So that is what. So one person. So in this case, even if you are a very rational person, then perhaps at the end of it, you might end up pressing the button rather than stabbing the one person. You know, once I was reading about a lady. There was a lady in America. She was celebrating, old lady in America. She was celebrating 50 years of her marriage, golden jubilee of marriage. Now somebody asked her that, what is the secret of your successful marriage? 50 years of marriage with the same person? How could you manage it? Because in America, that's a great achievement. 50 years. In India, it's very normal. But in America, 50 years of married life with one person, that is very great achievement for the Americans. So somebody asked her that 50 years with same person, how could you live? What is the secret of your successful marriage? To which the lady said that only secret of my successful marriage is that during all these 50 years, I did not think, not even once, I did not think, not even once, well, to divorce my husband. Murder many times, but divorce never. Now, that's very interesting. She said that he is such an irritating person that many times I thought that I will kill him, I will murder him, but I never thought that I will divorce him, and that saved our marriage. Now, that is an interesting thing, that if you plan to murder someone, then it may be okay. Why it may be okay? Because chances are high that you may not be able to execute your plan. Because if you try it at the time when you try to commit a murder, for example, there is something inside you that will stop you. There is a break in you. So if you plan to murder someone, then it is okay because you may not be able to execute that plan. It will remain a plan all the way. You will never be able to execute that. But if you plan to divorce someone, that may be okay. That will be easily successful. That's just a legal process. So if you think of divorcing someone, your marriage will break. If you think of murdering someone, chances are high that your marriage will be saved. This is what this lady says. Empathy can help us to explain why does it happen. So this is what we can say empathy does for us. So, but such people you can see that I am talking about in this second point, their internal brake is a faulty brake. So they, for example, they can hit a child so badly that the child may lose his hearing. Just think of it. Just think of it. Suppose there is a teacher. The teacher hits a child in anger. One slap. One slap you give, the child will cry. Second slap, the crying will become louder. Third slap, the crying will become shriller. At one point of time, well, the teacher will know that this child will not be able to take more than that, and they stop. Every teacher knows that there are some children, for example, for them one slap is enough. And there are some children, they can take up to 4 also. And there are some children, well, for them even 10 may not be okay. So that which category you belong to? Well, think of it. So question here is that how does a teacher know that this child, for this child only one slap is enough, you don't need a second? And how does the teacher knows that this child can take up to 4 also? And how does the teacher know that for this child even 10 is not sufficient, you can keep on hitting him as much as you want, nothing will happen to him? This is where empathy comes up, because the child starts, when the child starts getting hit, for example, then he will start showing the sign of distress by all those means, that of facial expression, crying, intonation of the voice, body language, gesture, posture, etc. So looking at all these things, automatically the teacher will start feeling change in his own empathic mind. And because of that, he will be able to understand and stop at a point when it is appropriate. That is what empathy does. So empathy allows us to adjust our behavior with reference to the other people's emotion, particularly when the other person is feeling pain because of our wrong. That is what empathy does for us. But such people, their brake is a faulty brake. Their gauge is a faulty gauge. And because of that, they are not able to understand that this child is undergoing a deep distress. So it is extremely inappropriate for us to hit the child again. They keep on hitting the child till the point child might get unconscious or some extremely unfortunate thing may happen. And because of that, the consequence will extremely, child may have some permanent physical disability, the family will suffer, the teacher will lose his job, he will spend a few years in jail, so many consequences may happen. So that is what is the second problem that may happen. Empathy is a problem in that. Lack of empathy is a problem. Then third is a serious problem. Second can be serious sometimes. Third is a big serious problem. What is that? Write down further. If the empathy is extremely low, then it may lead to criminal tendency or juvenile delinquency. It may lead to criminal tendency or juvenile delinquency in the person. Now that is the third problem, a most serious problem. So idea here is that if the empathy is extremely low, then in such a condition, well, it may possibly lead to criminal tendency. Such a person is more likely to commit a crime later on or engage in juvenile delinquent act, crime committed by a child in his later life. Again, remember, I am not talking about all the crime. I am essentially talking about the violent crime. Violent crime in which somebody physically suffers because of the crime of the criminal, like murder, rape. These are the, you can say, the violent crime that we are talking about. So such a person whose empathy is extremely low, such a person is more likely to commit such a violent crime like murder or rape. Now this is an important thing that we need to perhaps remember or understand, because it is known since the long in the history of, you can say, sociology, or you can say whatever you can call it, since long it is known. But that if you look at any crime, criminal behavior is always found to be, you can say, preceded by or related to some disturbed childhood. Criminal behavior is always found to be somehow related to the disturbed childhood. So any big criminal you can talk about, the, you can say, murderer, rapist, etc. If you go back into the life of that person, chances are high that he might have a disturbed childhood. Reverse is not true. Every disturbed child does not become a criminal, but every criminal definitely would have a disturbed childhood. So this is well known. Disturbed childhood means what? The child may have been brought up by a single parent maybe, or the parents might have been divorced maybe, or the parents have extreme financial condition, so that parents are 100% engaged just in order to fulfill the minimum necessary financial need of the family. Or for example, the relations with the parents are very bad, they keep on fighting with each other all the day, or the father is very abusive. Every day in the evening he comes home drunk and beats his wife and child very badly. Lot of physical abuse and violence is there in the family. All of these are the poor class problem, lower class problem. But among the rich people, upper class people or middle class people, when the parents are highly career oriented, so strongly career oriented that they do not have any time to spend with their child. So children are poor. So they do take care of the needs of the child every way, which way, but they do not have the, you can say, the quality time to spend with the child. So in this case, as you can say, so career oriented parents often create a problem. I have heard somebody was telling me that there was a man, somebody asked him that how big is your child? How big your child has become? He was born a few years ago. Then the person said he is that big. Then the other person was surprised. What is the meaning of that big? Children are this big, or that big. What is the meaning of that big? He said that I have never, every day in the morning when I leave for my office, my child is sleeping. And in the evening, in the night when I come back, the child has already slept. So every day I have never seen my child standing. I have always seen him always only sleeping. So every day in the morning I measure him. So I have only seen him growing like this. I have never seen him growing like this. So that is how many parents are. So if you never see your child growing like this, you see your child only growing like this, then that is a serious problem perhaps. That will create a problem of empathy maybe. So such parents do not have the time to spend with the family. So that is a disturbed family from our point of view. Now this is already known. Remember, again I repeat that every criminal has a disturbed childhood mostly, but the most often, but every disturbed child does not become a criminal. Now the missing link between the two we recognize. The missing link between the two is that a disturbed childhood leads to a lack of empathy. And this lack of empathy may lead to the criminal tendency. So for example, if the disturbed childhood does not lead to a lack of empathy, then the child will still lead a very normal life. So child may get attunement, for example, from some other source, if not the family or parents. Suppose in their school, the child gets a very supportive teacher or the other friends maybe. Child may get attunement in some other relatives like grandfather or somebody. Child may get attunement by a neighbor maybe, or some friend's family maybe, or the child may engage himself more in the artistic activity like music, literature, painting, sculpture. So art often increases our empathy. As I told you earlier, art is all about empathy. So if the child is able to do all of these things, then in spite of a little disturbed family, the child may still grow out to be a normal person. That if that does not happen, then it may result into a lack of empathy, which may necessarily possibly lead to the criminal tendency. Now this recognition has led to a lot of debate in the more recent time. What is that debate? Think of it. Suppose for example, there is a person who is, you can say, who has committed a heinous crime like say rape. Suppose he has committed rape at say 20-25 years of age. Suppose this is time. What is the, suppose at 20 years of age he committed rape. What is the maximum punishment for rape in India? Well, it is 30 years. It is 10 years. 10 years is the maximum. So he is put in jail, and 10 years later at 30 years of age he is released from the jail. Now if our original hypothesis that his first crime was because of a lack of empathy, then what is the probability that 10 years later when he is released from jail, then his empathy has actually increased? Well, very low. Why it is low? Because if you look at attunement, which we have seen plays a very important role in you can see the development of empathy. Attunement is not something that we get only during the childhood. That is the base attunement that creates a base, but ground, plinth in a way of building of empathy. Attunement is something that we have every day. Every day we all attune with each other. Suppose for example, you are in a metro, somebody is sitting beside you, a stranger, suddenly that person starts coughing badly. And suppose you have a small bottle of water, then what is the probability that you will offer this glass of water to that person? Chances are very high that you will do that. If you do so, then you are providing attunement to that person. Suppose for example, you are standing on the road, suddenly you find that there is a very old lady. She is trying to cross the road, but because of the heavy traffic, she is not able to do that. In this case, what is the probability that you will go ahead and hold the hand of that lady and help her to cross the road? Very high. So if you do so, then you provide attunement to that lady. Or suppose for example, you are trying to reverse your car on a busy road, and because of the busy traffic, you are not able to reverse your car. Then within a minute or so, you will see that somebody from around will come to you, and that person will help you to reverse your car. If that person does so, then he provides attunement to you. They are the appropriate behavior when we see somebody in a distress. So the idea is that every day we all attune each other in our public life now. We don't even think that we are doing, we simply do it and forget. That is a sign of a good society, empathic society. So attunement is an ongoing process. Every day we all attune each other. Yet in jail, these criminals spend all of their time with other criminals who are already low in empathy. Because of that, they never get that attunement as such. And because of that, of course, well, so if at all, so their empathy has definitely not improved, but if at all, their empathy has actually reduced because of that. So if his empathy is reduced after being released from the jail, then what is the probability that after being released from the jail, this criminal will commit the same crime again? Chances are very high, because cause of his crime is still there inside him. So next time after being released from the jail, he will keep on looking for the opportunity, and the moment he will get an opportunity, he might commit the same crime again. That is where the problem. So by releasing such a person, you can say from the jail at 30 years of age maybe, we are putting a large number of potential victims in our society at risk. He will keep on looking for the opportunity, and the moment he will get an opportunity, he might commit the same crime again. And it has been actually seen. Just a few months ago, I was reading a news, somewhere it has happened in Punjab or somewhere, that there was a person who was released on bail, a rape convict, he was released from bail, on bail, rape accused, was released from bail, and within a week of being released, he committed rape again, and he was again brought up in jail further. Repeat offenders are very common. So just by releasing the jail after 10 years, you may not be able to solve the problem. You are actually making a risky society because of such people roaming free in the society. Now, what is the solution? There can be three choices. One is that, as many people demand, that such rapist must be hanged. Death penalty, kill the rapist. So after every, you can say, tragic case like this, when it happens, then kill the rapist becomes a, I can say, rallying ground. Well, that is impractical. We can't do that. We don't have that justice system now. Second choice is that we can keep the person in jail till the end of his life. Till the end of his life. That is also impractical. You can't do that also. So you can't do that also. Then after, third choice is our solution. What is our solution? Well, we will see here that during this period of jail, this person should be given some amount of training in empathy. These people should be given some amount of training in empathy. Remember, empathy can be learned. All the emotional intelligence are learned. So as long as there is no biological defect in the brain of the person, empathy. If there is a biological defect, then that person becomes psychopath, maybe incorrigible. You can't correct that person. But if there is no biological defect, which is the case in 99% of the criminals, so if there is no biological defect, then training of empathy can be given. They become criminal not because there is something biologically missing in them. They become criminal, perhaps their empathy has not yet evolved. They did not get the opportunity, can say, appropriate amount of attunement during their childhood. So we should, and this training is very simple. It's not very difficult training. So many training modules have been developed by these people, and these training modules go on for just 2 hours a day, 15 days a month, 15 days continuously. Even that is found to be extremely effective. So many such training modules have been developed. I will not go into the detail of that here, but many such training modules have been developed by such people. So for example, one research I remember, these training modules have been found to be extremely effective in reducing the crime. One research I was reading some time ago, just think of it. Suppose there are two jails are there, A and B, and everything is same in that jail. Both of these two jails are 100% same in every aspect. They are in a similar city, similar type of criminal, demographic profile of the criminals. Everything is more or less same, and all other jail reform program is also same in both of them. Only difference is that in this jail, a training of empathy is given. This jail, no such training of empathy is given. Because of that single difference, it was found that in this jail, the relapse rate was found. Relapse rate, what is relapse rate, by the way? I hope you remember, you know. Relapse rate is the rate at which the probability that a criminal released from a jail will commit the same crime again. So that rate is called relapse rate. What is the probability that the criminal will relapse into the crime again? So it was found that relapse rate in this jail was found to be reduced by as much as 70% in comparison to that jail. So what I mean here is something like this, that a criminal released from the first jail, he is 70% less likely to commit the same crime again in comparison to a criminal released from this jail, because of a single difference that he was given a training of empathy and he was not given. We cannot have 100% result because we are not dealing with a machine, we are dealing with the human beings, but even 70% reduction might be a desirable thing, might be a great achievement. So this is what we suggest here, that during this jail, these criminals who are otherwise had a disturbed childhood, etc., maybe they become bad person in the society because of that. Well, there some amount of training should be given to them. If you train them for this, then ultimately we can make them a more law-abiding moral citizen, and we can make a better society, less threatening society from such a criminal acts and all. This is what our suggestion is, solution is, and this is what we should be doing. So, there is a problem of empathy, that can be the solution of that. Now, let us see some question before you proceed further. Braja, so some people, terrorists, kill humans with ruthlessness. Is it not? Is not work empathy on their mirror neuron? Braja, yes, Braja, empathy is there, but many of these criminals, or you can say terrorists, particularly organized terrorist camps and all, they train people to blunt their empathy. Empathy can be blunted also. Remember, empathy can be learnt and can be so blunted also. In fact, soldiers also in army are given training how to kill the enemy soldiers. It did. So these terrorists are also given training that how to kill people in that case. So nobody becomes terrorist on day one. So long training is given to them, and slowly they are asked to kill one person, 2 people, 5 people, and then after slowly they become more and more. So there is a way we brainwash them, we often train them, and then only, well, they are able to. Most normal people cannot become terrorists like that. Well, for that much more effort is required. Next question, Subhashri. So this notion of empathy may lead me to punish those assaulters in Manipur in the most harsher manner as quick as possible, which is just opposite of me being an emotionally intelligent person who is well aware about the fact of impulse. It is a dilemma. How to address this? Yes, Subhashri, it is a fact that in such cases people become, even the can say the chief minister of Manipur had just in the break I was reading about that. The chief minister of Manipur also have said that I will demand death penalty for those criminals in that case. After 2 months, this event happened on 4th of July, sorry, 4th of May. So virtually after 2 months, 2.5 months maybe, well, can say the demand is there. But empathy may allow me to demand a death penalty. Not only you, even I may demand, as in because of empathy. I became outraged when I heard about this event. So it will force us to demand, but ultimately we have to be a little more rational. This also we'll to talk about in the next point. So, but it will play this anger, this rage that you feel or I feel in such case. Well, it is plays a very important role. We'll talk about that in the next topic also. How important it is to be angry at such a person, such event in our society. We'll see that in the next topic also. But yes, you are right that it creates an impulse, a strong impulse to punish those people, maybe with death penalty also, and that too very torturous death penalty maybe. So, that now till this point we have been talking about that extremely low empathy may lead to the unsocial or immoral behavior. Now, next important question is that is the reverse also true, that high amount of empathy may possibly lead to the moral behavior also, the you can say the ethical behavior as well. Well, that also has been found to be true, and this is what we will talk about in the next point topic. So change the paragraph and then after write further. Empathy and ethics. Empathy and ethics. Write down firstly. According to Martin Hoffman, empathy can be considered as the root of human morality. Empathy can be considered as the root of human morality and altruistic behavior. Empathy can be considered as the root of human morality and altruistic behavior. Now, this is what can say. Now, let's briefly talk about Martin Hoffman. Now, Martin Hoffman is a person who in this area has done very extensive research, most important research in this area. In fact, he has published a book also, an extremely influential book on this topic called Empathy and Moral Development. So, in that book, he has actually tried to find a parallel between empathy and ethics. He said that as children grow up from childhood, then their empathy develops. So, a small child's sympathy is different than adult sympathy, as we have seen. So, as we grow, then our empathy keeps on changing. And adults also, your empathy may be something else and mine will be something else, which we will see in the next few topics. And you can see that parallel to that, there is a development of morality also. People's morality also differ. So, child's morality is different from the morality of an adult. And adult also have a different stages of morality. So, he talks about stage of empathy development and stage of morality development, and he found there is a parallel between the two. As empathy develops, the quality of a moral judgment also keeps on changing. So, there is a parallel development of empathy and the morality in the people. This is what he found. So, he had said that the empathy can be considered at people like Martin Hoffman, Daniel Goleman, etc., etc. These people say that empathy can be considered as the root of human morality and altruistic behavior. What is the meaning of the term altruistic behavior? Well, altruistic behavior, all of you know, is that altruistic behavior is the one in which we help somebody else without expecting any return from that person. So, normally when I help you, then I expect some return, but when I help, I don't expect any return, then that will be an example of altruistic behavior. Also, all the three examples that they gave you in the previous topic, they are examples of altruistic behavior. So, if you offer a glass of water to a stranger, then that is altruistic behavior, because you don't expect any return from that person. You don't expect that he will pay you back for that. Or if you help an old lady to cross the road, then you are not expecting any return. You just do it and you forget. Or when you help somebody to reverse his car on a busy traffic, for example, you are not expecting any return for that person, that he will say thanks or he will pay you some money for that. No, you simply do it and you move ahead. So, every day, as you know, we all engage in many such small acts of altruism. We don't even notice that we are doing. We simply do it and we move ahead. But these acts play a very important role to keep the empathy in the society at a high level, which makes us to live a normal life in a good society. So, these small acts of altruism plays a very important role in our society generally. According to Martin Hoffman, empathy is the root of such small acts of altruism. Had empathy not been there, then it would have been impossible for a human being to engage in such altruistic behavior. So, that is what he said, that morality and altruism, both of them are rooted into empathy. Had empathy not been there, then morality would have been perhaps never been possible for a human being, and altruism, forget about it. So, this is what he and others have found. How is it that morality is affected by your empathy? Let us talk about a little more. Change the paragraph and then after write further. Empathy influences our moral judgment. Empathy influences our, or rather ethics. Empathy influences ethics, Empathy influences ethics in at least three ways. Empathy influences ethics in at least three ways. In at least three ways. First one, write down. Empathy influences our moral judgment. Empathy influences our moral judgment when we face some moral dilemma when we face some moral dilemma, because such dilemma often involve some potential victim in pain, suffering, or deprivation. Pain, suffering, or deprivation. Such dilemma often involves some potential victim in pain, suffering, or deprivation. Now, before we talk about this point, let me see. I think there is a question: is that relevant here? So, those people who made that girl in Manipur to walk naked, can we say that they have low empathy? Nayan, yes, then it did appear. There is two important possibilities there. Maybe that they are low in empathy, that is a fact. But second problem also is that, Nayan, sometimes that when people become part of a mob, that their empathy often gets blunted. That is why you can say people can commit a much heinous crime in a mob than when they are alone. And just as you can say in the case I told you that killing one person is more difficult and pressing a button to kill 1,000 people is easier. So similarly, a single person, it hardly ever commits a crime. It's very difficult. But when large number of people are there, then there are some process happens which, if time permits, we may talk about that. What makes good people commit a crime, bad act? So it's not necessary that everybody in that crowd may have lack of empathy. There might be some normal people like us. Well, then also in a crowd, such a mob, they might become monsters. So we will also talk about maybe on Monday's class that what makes good people to commit bad act. So right now we cannot say much about who were those people. So it may be possible they were criminals, they might be low in empathy already, but other people also who became part of that mob, well, they might be affected by certain you can say aspect of human life also. That is something that we further have to understand. We will talk about those aspects also on Monday's class. What makes good people bad? Here bad people do the bad act, that is understandable. But even good people sometimes commit extremely bad act. We will also talk about that. That is also a part of our course. Maybe on Monday we will talk about that. Now come back to this point. Now empathy influences our moral judgment when we face some moral dilemma. What is a moral dilemma? Now moral dilemma is a situation in which, suppose for example, at one point of time you have two choices in front of you, A and B, and you have to make a decision what is right and what is wrong. And you are not able to make up your mind. Both of them appear to be right in some way and both of them appear to be wrong in some way. So that is the situation here. Now in this case, this situation is called moral dilemma because you have to make a choice, that is a fact, but you don't know how to make a choice. You are confused. So that mental state of confusion about what is right and what is wrong is called moral dilemma. Now whenever we face some moral dilemma like this, then empathy is according to these people, and when you make a judgment in favor of one or the other, then that is called moral judgment. Moral judgment. Now when we make moral judgment, then according to people, these people that I am talking about here, they say empathy is one of the most important reasons for which people make a judgment here. Think of it. Let's take one example, few examples. One example that I have taken a number of times in my earlier class also. Think about that. That old lady, remember that case, old lady dying in a hospital? Suppose that old lady is dying in a hospital, well, and suddenly a very unfortunate, you have to tell her the truth. Suppose her younger son dies in a road accident and you have to tell her the truth. You have to tell her the truth that your son is dead before she dies tomorrow. And second choice is that you can lie to her and, well, let her die comparatively peacefully. I hope you remember that, you all remember that case. Suppose for example, in this situation, only these two choices are there in front of you. You can speak truth or you can lie to her. In this situation, what would you do? Would you speak truth or would you lie to her? Now, when I ask this question in my class, even this topic here, almost 70, 80, 90% of the students still say that they will lie. And then I ask them that, yes, then it means that there is no benefit of studying Kantian philosophy and all. Well, even after knowing all the Kantian philosophy, all the Gandhian philosophy, etc., 90% of the people will still prefer to lie here. If you decide to lie to that old lady here, what is the reason? Well, empathy is the reason for that, because in this case you are not much bothered about your pain. You think about the pain of that lady, which makes you to think, okay, lying is justified, I can lie here. So her pain, perception of her pain, forces you to do something which is morally wrong here. So, but suppose for example you are among those 10-20% people who speak truth. Even if you decide to speak the truth, then you will see empathy will make it difficult for you to speak. Your tongue will start shaking. Word will not come out of your mouth. How can I speak? How can I speak? Just as you can say, if you as a rational person decide to stab that person to death rather than press a button and kill 1,000 people somewhere else, here also that either you will lie, or if you speak the truth, then empathy will make truth speaking very difficult for you. You may not be able to speak the truth in that case. That is what we have found to be happening here. So that is how empathy is. So empathy will make you to lie, do morally wrong, or empathy may make you to speaking truth very, very difficult for you. Let's take a second example. Suppose for example, tomorrow morning you get a news that one of your very close friend has met with an accident. He is in a hospital, out of danger, being taken care of by the doctors, nurses, etc. Now the moment you come to know about the accident, you feel very sad. You make a call to your friend and you tell your friend that I am very sorry, extremely sorry that you met with an accident, and you promise your friend that after the office today in the evening I will come to meet you in the hospital. Now your friend is very happy, please come, I'll keep whole day, I'll keep on waiting for you. Now deal is done. That in the evening after your office you will go to meet your friend in the hospital. He keeps on waiting for you the whole day. Now suppose in the afternoon one of your second friend comes to you and he tells you that in my family there is a grand occasion today, so I am throwing a grand party in a big 5-star hotel in the Hyatt Regency, Le Meridian, Park Plaza. So I am throwing a grand party in a big 5-star Vivanta, big 5-star hotel in my city. So please come and enjoy the party. Now you tell your second friend that I am sorry that I will not be able to come to your party because my friend has met with an accident and I have to go there to see him in the hospital. I have promised him. Now your second friend tells you, yeah, forget about your that promise. You can go there tomorrow also. He's not dying. He's in the hospital, safe. So you can go there tomorrow also. A party will not happen tomorrow. Let's enjoy the party today. You can go to meet your friend tomorrow. That is logically not very bad thing maybe. Now in this case you have two choices in front of you. One choice is that you can keep your promise and sacrifice the party. And second choice is that you can break the promise and enjoy the party. If these are the only two choices in front of you, there is no third choice. Don't try to be intelligent, sir, after the party I will go to meet my friend. No, that is not possible. Your visiting hour is not there. The hospital is on the other side of the city. You can't go there after the party. So if these two are the only two choices in front of you, then what would you do in that case? Again, in my class, when I get the answer, I ask this question, also 90% of the students say, sir, I will keep the promise. And so if you are a normal person among those 90%, then you will prefer to keep it. Why? If you decide to keep the promise, sacrifice your happiness, your party maybe, what was the reason for that? Empathy was the reason. So you thought about your friend that if I go for the party and break my promise, then my friend will feel so bad. So your friend feeling bad will motivate you to, well, sacrifice your own happiness also, the party in that case. You may keep the promise. But suppose for example, you are a more rational person that, oh, I will go to my friend tomorrow, let me enjoy the party today. So if you decide to break the promise and go to enjoy the party, then you will see you will not be able to enjoy the party the way you could have done it otherwise. Something in your mind will keep on telling you that, no, you are doing wrong, you are doing wrong. So the idea is that empathy may make you to keep your promise and sacrifice your party, or empathy will, if you decide to break your promise, then empathy will make the enjoyment of your party much lessened for you, much reduced for you. This is what empathy. So idea here is that empathy can make you sometimes to do the wrong thing also, like lying, and right thing also, like keeping your promise. So what I mean here is that empathy is a type of, you can see, empathy is a type of internal emotional undercurrent. I hope you remember that we had talked about in some other class earlier that emotional there is an emotional undercurrent inside us that makes us to can say creates intuition in us. That intuition includes morality also, moral intuition, moral sense as we call it sometimes. So that moral sense is a very important part of our, well, moral life in a way. So empathy is an important part of that moral sense. Empathy keeps on pushing you, okay, lie or keep your promise. So there is some internal, can say, system is there inside us, empathy being a part of that, that keeps on forcing us to do sometimes this, sometimes that. This is what we mean by this thing, that empathy helps us to make a moral judgment when we face some ethical dilemma. That is the first important thing, that empathy influences us. Second one, think about any such example. Second one, write down. Empathy also influences the extent to which we support and follow empathy also influences the extent to which we support and follow some abstract moral principles like liberty, human rights, or collective happiness, etc. Empathy also influences the extent to which we support and follow some abstract moral principles like liberty, human rights, dignity, or some collective happiness, etc. So that is further thing that we can understand. The idea here is that in the previous examples that I talked about, that we talk about individual person. So in both the example that I gave you, you think about a person, that old lady in the hospital dying, her pain influenced you. In the second case, I talked about a friend who is in a hospital, his pain influenced you. But beyond this personal interaction, it is also found that empathy is that basis on which we support and follow some abstract moral principles like, for example, liberty, we can say collective happiness, etc. Now about this thing, again, I would like to talk about one important philosopher. There is a person, there is a philosopher, one of the most respected philosopher of our time. I hope you might remember his name. I have mentioned his name in some other class also earlier. His name is Peter Singer. Peter Singer is one of the most respected moral philosopher of our time, particularly within the field of utilitarian philosophy. He is considered to be the founder of philosophical animal ethics today. So animal ethics is one branch of philosophy that he is considered to be the central figure of, founder of in a way. I might have mentioned his philosophy, his not philosophy, his actually name at least in my some class of Bentham maybe in a way. Now Peter Singer had written a book, one book that is extremely influential, a beautiful book again. Again, I am not recommending you to read that book, but I will mention about some idea of that book. In fact, the title of that book is itself very interesting for us to understand. What is the title of that book? Let's take the title. This complete, you can say, expresses certain idea which is the core of everything that we are discussing today. The book that he has written, which I am trying to talk about, is name of that book is, title of that book is The Expanding Circle. The expanding circle. Now this concept of expanding circle is a very interesting concept that I would like to talk a little detail about. What is this idea of expanding circle proposed by the people like Peter Singer? Now these people say, Martin Hoffman, Daniel Goleman, Peter Singer, etc. Now these people say that at the most basic level our empathy is personal. At the most basic level our empathy is, let's call this circle of empathy. So at the most basic level within our circle of empathy, that people who are closest to us will be there. So my empathy, for example, towards my daughter will be much stronger than my empathy towards any other girl of that age. My empathy, so a small pain of my daughter will influence me much strongly than a similar pain of some other girl. Or my empathy towards my mother will be much stronger than my empathy towards any other lady of that age. So a small difficulty of my mother will influence me much strongly than a similar difficulty of somebody else. So the idea is that at the most core basic level, our empathy is strongest for those people who are very close to us, that our family members, our closest friend, closest relatives, etc. But as we grow up, become part of a larger society, then slowly this circle of empathy, let's call that as circle of empathy, this circle of empathy becomes wider and wider. And more groups of people get included into that. More and more groups of people get included into that. So for example, if you go larger than personal circle, then maybe it's immediate community, neighborhood community, village community, for example. So anything happening in our neighborhood will affect us more than similar thing happening somewhere else. At a higher level, it can remain caste. So if you believe in the caste system, then a wrong happening to a member of your caste will influence you much strongly than a similar wrong happening to a member of other caste. Suppose for example you are a SC, for a scheduled caste for example, then same wrong happening to a member, so a wrong happening to a member of other scheduled caste, then you will feel like say Rohit Bemula for example, then you will feel much strongly than a non-scheduled caste person will feel. Tribe for example, so those tribe in Manipur whose girl that belong to, let's say this girl belong to which, well they will be much more outraged than perhaps other people would be. So our caste may become, our tribe may become part of that circle of empathy. At a higher level, it can become religion. Religion can become member of our circle of empathy. So for example, if you believe in religion, suppose if you are a Muslim for example, and something wrong happens to a Muslim, then you will feel much strongly than a similar wrong happening to a non-Muslim. If you are a Hindu, and if a wrong happens to a Hindu, then you might be affected more by that, well, than a similar wrong happening to a non-Hindu in that case. So your religion may be your circle of empathy. At higher level, it can become nation. So when it's wrong happens to a member of our country, well, then that will influence us much strongly than a similar wrong happening to a non-Indian. So we feel so outraged about Manipur because Manipur is in India. Had a similar wrong happen in, can say somewhere else maybe, Myanmar maybe or Ukraine maybe, then we may not be that affected by that maybe. You may have felt sad but not that outraged. Nation will be a circle of empathy, and at the highest level it might become the humanity. When the whole humanity becomes a part of your circle of empathy, then we call that as the human rights. I hope that you remember the human rights in that class we have talked. What are the human rights? Human rights are those rights which we support, which believe should be available even to those people whom we don't like, who are the criminals, terrorists, bad people. But then also they are human beings and it's our duty to respect their rights. So that is what we can say the human rights would be. So at the highest level of circle of empathy, it might become the human, whole of humanity may become part of that circle of empathy. So Peter Singer says that as we develop in our society, then our circle of empathy has become bigger and bigger. So in ancient time, for example, we all used to live in a tribal society. So our circle of empathy included only our own tribe. So that, well, when one tribe used to raid a neighboring tribe, you must have heard about such tribal raid, and they used to ruthlessly kill every member of the other tribe without bothering that they are also human being and they also have certain feelings, a certain, well, so that was it. But as we grow up in the society, then, well, our circle of empathy have become bigger and bigger, larger and larger. And today we have reached to a level where the whole of humanity is a part of our circle of empathy. So this is what he has written in his book. Well, there is a line that I will use as a quotation. He had said, Peter Singer, and I am quoting him, he said that history of human civilization is the expansion of the circle of empathy, expanding circle of empathy. So as the civilization has developed for the last 6,000 years maybe, then our circle of empathy is becoming continuously, it is becoming bigger and bigger. And today it has become so large that every member of the human species is become part of that. And then after he further said that now the time has come that we can further expand that circle of empathy. Now, what should be included in that further expanded circle of empathy? Well, I hope you might have guessed it. Well, it will be the animals. So this is what is the argument that he has given for animal ethics. He said that now our moral development has reached to a level that we think about the pain of every human being in the world. Let us think about animals also now. Let us become larger in our empathy circle. So this is what he has said. But idea here is that as people grow, develop morally, then their circle of empathy becomes bigger and bigger. That is how we can see. So these people will say that if you talk about human rights and all, this idea of human rights, etc., human rights, liberty, etc., is such a powerful idea only and only because it is rooted at one of the most basic human ability, that is, we can say empathy. Had empathy, that base is that same empathy. So had this empathy not been there, then all these things would have been, this great idea like human rights, etc., would have been a bookish idea. It would not have been so powerful to change the society. Remember, we have talked about in that class that these ideas of human rights are so powerful that they have changed the human, you can say, society significantly. So because of these ideas of human rights, that the decolonization of the world has happened, or you can see the dismantling of the empire has happened. All these things happened because of the, well, ideas of human rights, UDHR, etc. But these ideas would have been not so powerful had it not been based on a basic human ability called empathy. Empathy is something that gives its sustenance, fuel. It is because of empathy that we are able to talk about such grand ideas. Further, it is also found that the people who exist at a lower circle of empathy, they are more likely to use the people outside their circle of empathy merely as a means. So suppose, for example, somebody exists as a circle of empathy of religion, then this person may use somebody outside his circle of empathy, like other religion members, well, very brutally also, merely as a means, kill that person also without having any remorse. Or if caste is that circle of empathy, then these people can kill other members of a caste without any remorse, without any feeling. That is how the terrorist organization train them. That anybody who does not belong to your circle of empathy, for example, religion, well, they deserve to be killed. So these terrorists, etc., they try to shrink our circle of empathy, and ethics often tries to expand our circle of empathy. So this is what some people's circle of empathy is very wide. Circle of empathy of a person like Gandhi, Buddha, etc., Kant was very, very wide. Tagore. So they included the whole of humanity in that case. Some people's circle of empathy is even larger than that. Mahavir, for example. Now, in his circle of empathy, even small insects and ants, etc., used to come. You must be aware that Mahavir himself and Jain monks today also, when they walk around and they cover their, even in pre-COVID time or post-COVID time, they cover their face with a cloth so that the small insects do not get into their mouth and nose and get killed. Or they keep a broom in their hand and clean the road before they move on, so that small ants, etc., do not get trampled under their feet and killed. So their circle of empathy was so wide that even small ants, etc., were part of that. So that is what is the circle of empathy. But remember, all of these things is based on that basic empathy that we have. That is where the empathy influence our larger moral principle also, like human rights, liberty, etc. So that is a second important way that empathy influence our moral judgment. And there is a third way also, further. Empathic anger Empathic anger gives us a sense of justice. Empathic anger gives us a sense of justice. It is sometimes also called the guardian of justice. It is sometimes also called the guardian of justice. Now, let's talk about a few things further. Empathic anger, let's talk about, or before that, let's talk about anger first. What is the anger, for example? What is the function of anger? What does anger do to us? Well, I hope you remember, we have discussed that in our introduction class earlier. Now, anger is that emotion which tells us that something wrong has happened, something wrong, unjustified, frustrating. That is anger. And empathic anger is the one when wrong happens to somebody else and we feel anger. Such anger is called empathic anger. So when wrong happens to me and then I become angry, that is pure anger. But when wrong happens to somebody else and we feel angry, then that is empathic anger. So if you are outraged by looking at that Manipur, can say getting the news of that Manipur girl, for example, then that anger that you feel or I feel is empathic anger. We don't know who that girl was. We have no relationship with her, but still we feel strong anger. That is called empathic anger. Number one. Secondly, we all have a sense of justice. What is sense of justice? Sense of justice is the natural sense that we have that what is justice in the society and what is not. Just think of it. Suppose, for example, I tell you that, say, in our society, for a crime like, say rape, for a crime like rape or murder, suppose there is a provision of death penalty. Then what do you think? Is it justified? Perhaps many of you may possibly say, yes, it is. Particularly after that Manipur event, many of you will be saying that, yes, it is justified, that rapist must be hanged. So you may say that it is justified, many of you at least. But suppose if I tell you that there is a proposal in our society that for a crime like theft or robbery, there should be death penalty, then do you think that will be justified? Perhaps all of you will say that no, it is unjustified, it is unjust. If you say that, if somebody say that it is right, then that person should undergo a training of empathy perhaps. So in this case, everybody will say that it is wrong. Now, from where you get the sense that same penalty may be justified in this case, but in this case it will be completely unjustified. This is where the empathic anger comes up. That when we think about crime like rape and murder, then we feel strong anger. And because of that strong anger, we are willing to give a stronger punishment for that, like even death penalty. But when we think about theft and robbery, then also we become angry. That's why we consider that as a crime. But anger is much less in that case. Because of that, we are willing to give a smaller punishment for that, maybe a few years jail rather than death penalty. So, idea is that this sense of justice that we have, it is justified justice and it is injustice, same thing. Well, that sense of justice, from where it comes? We see here that sense of justice comes from the empathic anger. So, empathic anger actually gives us a sense that what is justice in the society and what is injustice in the society. In fact, John Stuart Mill had called this as guardian of justice. What is a guardian of justice? Because this empathic anger is the thing that guards the system of justice, acts as a guard to the system of justice in our society. Take the case of this Manipur event also you can take. Let us take an older case. 10 years ago, 11 years ago in Delhi, a very heinous crime has happened. I hope all of you remember that Nirbhaya case. We should never forget such a crime. Nirbhaya case in Delhi. So, in that case, extremely wrong, we can say, happened to that girl known as normally Nirbhaya. Her name was something else, but she is known as Nirbhaya. Now, extremely wrong happened there. She was raped, brutally raped again, and finally she also died. She could not be saved even if she was sent to Singapore for treatment. So now a heinous crime. Now after that crime, I remember I was in Delhi then there was extreme winter of December and January. So 16 December it had happened, and extreme winter, almost sub-zero temperature. Winter was very harsh in Delhi that year also, mostly as usual. So in extreme winter of Delhi, thousands of people in Delhi, well, they gathered at Jantar Mantar with candlelight to protest against that crime 24 hours in that extreme winter, 24 hours, day in and day night, to protest against that crime. So now question here is that what made people, all those people who protested against that crime, they did not even know the name of that girl. They did not know even the name of that girl. Now then also they were so angry that so from where that motivation came? Well, that was because of the empathic anger. So this crime created such a strong sense of anger in them that, well, for months and months these people protested against that, and this changed the whole system of justice about rape in India. Because of that, you can say protest or anger that people felt because of that crime, that the Burma Commission was formed and many recommendations were given how to make urban space safer for the women. Well, the punishment for rape was increased from 7 years to 10 years of jail. Nirbhaya Fund was established. In Delhi, hundreds of thousands of CCTV camera were lakhs of CCTV camera. Everywhere now you go to Delhi, you will find a CCTV camera, including in the buses, train, everywhere you can find a CCTV camera. And Nirbhaya Fund was established. So many things happened because of that one crime. As recently as a few years ago, the age of juvenility was reduced from 18 years to 16 years in that. Because one of the criminal in that case was a juvenile just for 6 months. And because of that, he was the only one who was not given the death penalty. Everybody else were, you can say, hanged because of that crime. So one crime happened and the whole justice system changed in the society. This is in this sense that we say that this empathic anger is a type of guardian of justice. Had empathic anger not been there, justice would never have been possible in the society. That anger actually act as a guard to the system of justice in the society. That is what we often say here. No, Gandhi used to say, you must have heard, and Gandhi used to say that when some injustice is happening in the society, then it is our moral duty to become angry at that. So what is happening in Manipur, it is our moral duty to become angry. If you do not become angry, then perhaps you are not a human being. Because that anger that you will feel will ultimately change the society. That is what keeps ethics at a high level in our society. Had this not been there, so had this not been there, then that anger, then perhaps it will never have a system of justice intact in ours. That will become a dead society in a way. So Gandhi said that when injustice is happening in our society anywhere, then it is our moral duty to become angry at that. Think of it, Gandhi, when he was thrown out of that train in South Africa, then it was injustice. He had a valid ticket, but still he was thrown out because he was not a white person, he was brown. It was injustice. He became very angry. Now, we all become angry in such case, but we become angry and we simply move ahead. We allow our anger to dissipate. Gandhi did not do that. He converted his personal anger into empathic anger. And because of that, he made other people also in the society angry about that, such events. And that ultimately made him. Remember, anger will not change society. Empathic anger will change society. If wrong happens to me and I become angry, it's never going to change society. But if wrong happens to me and everybody becomes angry, then that will ultimately change the society. Empathy is that. So empathic anger plays a very, very important role in, well, maintaining the ethics in the society, justice system in the society. That is how empathy influences the ethics of us. Now, let us see some of the questions that were there. I hope that one question was there. Yes, Subhasri, you had this question. So, this notion of empathy may lead me to punish those assaulted in Manipur in the most harshest manner as quick as possible, which is just opposite of me being an emotionally intelligent person who is well aware about the fact of impulse. It is a dilemma, how to address that. This is where you can say, Subhasri, you can think about human rights. You can go above all other considerations. You can enlarge your circle of empathy. That will make you to think more rationally maybe. So, I hope you got your answer. Some other question, Biswajit. So those people like Emogo, Leela, Prabhu who criticize other is due to lack of empathy. Biswajit, I do not know which case you are talking about. Criticism is not always lack of criticism, is an important part of moral behavior. But which criticism you are talking about? I'm sorry, I don't know. Subham, is there any relationship between empathy and leadership? Very much, yes. We will talk about that in tomorrow's class, Shubham. There very much relationship is there. Next one, I hope you understand about Gandhi now. So some answer you got, tomorrow we'll talk more about that. Next question, sir, is distance in increase empathy? If distance is increase empathy, I feel it when I am in hostel. My mommy papa called me daily, but when I came home, I did not see this type of care. Even long distance relationship is more attraction than they are near. Is it a cause of empathy? No, it is not about that. Long distance, we are actually not that sure how are you living. That's why your mummy papa used to call every day. But when they see you okay in the home all the time, then they don't have to be that careful maybe. So it's not about empathy, it's about a distance. Yeah, distance we are not sure. And because of that, we want to get more and more information. Next question, Sunanda. Sir, the people who already are compassionate towards animals, can we say that they have reached the outermost circle of empathy? Sunanda, situation is a little more complicated. Sometimes some people may be extremely compassionate towards animal, but they may not be so compassionate towards the human being. So for sake of cow, some people can kill a human being also. Is it? So that becomes a little. So if it is only about animal, then there is a high. There is not only about, very often you can say some people care more for the dogs, but not about other animal. More for the cows, not about other animal. But if you care for every animal maybe equally, more or less, then perhaps you have reached to that level. Okay, so that may be a little more complicated in that. So cow lynching, so what is that? Is that care for cow or lack of care, empathy for human being? That becomes complicated here. So that is it today. So that is about empathy in a way. Tomorrow we will talk about more of this thing. Competencies based on empathy, and leadership also we will talk about today. Somebody had asked that question. So that we will discuss in tomorrow's class. So that is it for today.